So we've talked a lot about workflow and how model setup is super important for the integrity of your model moving forward. Now let's show you how to keep your model organized. I want to show you guys a couple of photos. I just downloaded them off of Google. This one right here. And remember, you are creating a world, right? It's a virtual world. But if you were to physically walk onto a construction site that looked like this, what would you think of the builder, of the person responsible for this? Man, they're messy. Super messy. This is borderline dangerous. Nothing is organized. You got things all over the place, and talk about trip hazards. It's just a bad look on the person leading it, right? Now, if I show you an organized site, something like this, look how clean that looks. It's a direct reflection on the person or the company that is performing their work at that time. It's almost inviting for someone that has nothing to do with construction experience. It's almost inviting, like, wow, I can walk on there and really just take a look around. You know where the tools are. Everything is super organized. It's clean. It's a good reflection on the person who's there. I've been preaching so far about Revit is your world. You are building something here that you are responsible for its integrity, but you're also responsible for its cleanliness, okay? So when we work in our Revit file here, you have to understand that in this case, we're approaching this model as if we're just receiving CAD files. But we're building habits now so that when the time comes for you to share this model, this file that you're building with a different company, someone outside of your walls, of your four walls, you want this to reflect good on your company, sure, but you also want it to reflect well on you because you built this world for them, right? So take this very, very literally, okay? Have pride in the cleanliness of this world that you are putting together. Because even though we're doing this because we're building a model and we have to create drawings, at the end of the day, we're saving time for people in the field, okay? So what does that have anything to do with keeping your model organized? We've created grids, we've created levels, and now you can see that some of my grids are just kind of, like grid 1 is kind of all over the place. Maybe these grids D through G, maybe I want this nicely organized. Let's go to level 1. And if you're following along exactly with this training and you've downloaded the files, these sample CAD files, great. If you're using your own CAD files, same thing applies. So let's go ahead and go to our View tab. And under View tab, if we come over to, let's see if I can find it, under the Create panel, there's an option for something called a scope box. And it tells you exactly what it does. If you just hover over it and wait for the description that comes up, it says this scope box controls the visibility of datum elements in specific views. Create a scope box, apply it to datums, and then apply the scope box to desired views. We're going to get to the desired views a little later. Right now we're just good old-fashioned hard work of building something. So click on scope box, and Revit is communicating with you. So at the bottom left-hand corner of your Revit session, Revit is telling you, click to place first corner of the scope box. So I'm going to place my first corner right around here, top left of my entire building. Okay, so I'll click there. And now it says click to place at my status bar, the bottom left hand corner. It says click to place second corner of scope box. So the second corner of my scope box is going to be somewhere around, well, I got this, these wall situations here. Let's just put it around here. So it's placed my box. Okay. Go ahead and hit escape twice. Escape twice. Now on your keyboard, type in 3D or go to the 3D button up here. All right. And you can download these keyboard shortcuts right next to the videos. So here is my scope box. Now this cool little graphic right here at the top right hand corner is called my view cube. I'm going to navigate to a flat elevation of this, and now I'm going to modify my scope box so that it extrudes slightly below my level 1 and that it matches that same distance, right, from the level to there. You know, I'm kind of giving an eyeball of matching the top as well. I'm not changing how it looks side to side because I did that in level 1, right? So I'm going ahead and doing that, all right? So I have it selected. Now let's go ahead and click the Properties panel. Remember that when you have nothing selected, in the Properties panel, it gives you the view properties of the view that you're in. Now that I select the scope box that I want to modify, Revit communicates with me and letting me know what it can do at the top with the available tools, but also the available properties. In this case, I'm going to rename my scope box to and I'm just going to call it Datum Elements. We already know what Datum Elements is referring to. If we hit escape a couple of times and go to our Structure tab, on the far right under our Datum panel, there's only 2 elements that live in there. So I'm already getting into the habit of having the mindset that I'm going to share this model with somebody. At some point in time, I'm going to share my model with somebody, so that I am now providing communication. When someone sees this scope box and selects it, if they know Revit, they will know, oh, this scope box is modifying, it's controlling the levels and the grids, how they look. So now let's apply that. So now let's click on these grids, on these levels, sorry. Click on one level. Now on your keyboard, hit the control button down, and you see my cursor has a little plus next to it. And now click on the other levels that you want to add to this selection. Okay. Another way of doing that, do a crossing window, a right to left crossing window, and as soon as the rectangle passes through those 3 levels, they will select. Now these levels also have properties. So in my properties palette, the name is grayed out because each one has a different name, but I want to make sure that these are structural levels, okay? But I also want to make sure that on the extents where they truly live, I am talking to Revit now, communicating back, and I'm saying, I want this scope box to live, I want these levels to live where the scope box lives. Remember, Datum Elements is the name of the scope box. Now if I hit apply, you can see that my levels have shrunk to where the scope box exists. Okay? Now, good force of habit is to pin my scope box. So select your scope box and place a thumbtack on it. Now I can't move it by accident. So what we did here with levels, we're going to do with grids now. So let's go down to level 1, select one grid, right click on the grid, and hit select all instances in the entire project. All of them highlight. Saw it right there. Another way of selecting all of your grids is by zooming out a little bit, doing a crossing window for everything to select, and then using the filter option up here on your ribbon. This way you can hit check none and just select your grids. Okay, that's a second way. And then a third way, my preferred way, keyboard shortcuts. Selecting one grid and typing in SA for select all. SA. All of them select. That is the same thing as clicking on a grid, right-clicking on it, and going ahead and hit selecting all in the entire project. Okay, so 3 different ways you can do it. So my grids are all selected, and I'm going to repeat the same thing that I did with my levels. On my properties palette on the left, I am now communicating back with Revit and telling Revit, I want my grids to live, to exist where the scope box exists. And I select it, and now all of my grids have extended accordingly. See that? Okay. So now let me do a zoom extents, ZE. So we can see the CAD grids, right? And we can see the Revit grids. But you can see that some grid bubbles show up, like the bubble A is on one side and it's on the other side. If you want them to show up on both sides, select one grid. And now this is not an instance property, but this is a type property right here. Now I can say I want plan view symbols to show up on both ends. I hit OK. And that made a change with all of my grids. So now if we go to our project browser and click on level 2, and let me do a zoom extents here, you can see that everything is nicely organized and everything matches. And everything matches the scope box, because the scope box, the grids, and the levels, they are all connected. They're all intertwined. Okay. Now that I'm in level 3, I'm going to go ahead and hide this category by going to VG, coming over to annotation categories, and just turning off elevations. And now I can do a CE. So in your working plan views, remember this is just a window. You can modify this to how you want. So I'm going to turn off scope boxes in each one of these just to clean it up, because I already have the scope box is already doing its job. Okay, so this is a very good habit to get into, of specifying a workflow and then using a scope box to organize how your levels and grid exists. In the same way that we selected a grid and went into the type properties right here under type properties and turned both sides on, right, so the grid bubble shows up on both sides, you can do that with your levels as well. So let me hit escape. Let's go to our 3D view if you have it open. If you don't, click on 3D up here. You can see that when we created our levels, the level head showed up on one side and show up on the other. So you can do the same thing by selecting your level, going to your edit type properties, and go ahead and choosing checking on both checkboxes, and now they show up on both sides. Okay, good habits to get into.